A poor student danced at a coffee shop just to feel alive. She had no idea the man crying at the corner table was a millionaire, and her father, who had been searching for her for years without rest. Welcome back, and enjoy the story. The fluorescent lights above cast harsh shadows across the grimy linoleum floor of Murphy's Coffee House in downtown Chicago. Emily's worn sneakers squeaked against the wet surface as she dragged the frayed mop across another sticky patch, her shoulders aching from 12 straight hours of cleaning tables and brewing endless cups of mediocre coffee. The clock on the wall read 11:47 p.m., and the last customer had finally left, leaving behind crumpled napkins and the lingering smell of disappointment that seemed to permeate everything in her life. Her stomach growled, a sound she'd grown accustomed to ignoring, as she realized she'd have to choose between dinner and keeping the lights on in her basement room another week. The jazz music from the old radio crackled through the silence, and for just a moment, Emily closed her eyes and let the melody wash over her exhausted spirit. Then something magical happened. Despite the pain in her feet, despite the raw skin on her hands from industrial cleaner, despite the weight of 17 years of unanswered questions about who she was and where she belonged, Emily began to sway. The mop became her dance partner, and she spun once, twice, her movements graceful, despite her worn uniform and tired limbs. For 30 seconds, she wasn't a struggling college student facing eviction. She was simply a young woman finding beauty in the midst of her storm. Outside the window, hidden in the shadows of Michigan Avenue, a distinguished man in an expensive overcoat watched through the glass, his hands trembling as he held his coffee cup. Something about her movements, the tilt of her head, the way she smiled even in her solitude, made his heart race with recognition and regret. The morning sun cut through Emily's basement window like a blade, waking her from the 3 hours of sleep. She'd managed between shifts. Her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate. "Rent's due tomorrow. Don't be short again." Emily sat up on her mattress, a thin thing she'd found behind a furniture store, and checked her bank account. $43. Tuition payment was overdue by 2 weeks, and she knew what waited for her at the university's bursar office. The walk across campus felt like a death march, each step bringing her closer to the inevitable. The notice taped to the office door confirmed her worst fears: tuition unpaid, enrollment suspended. Her knees gave out, and she slumped against the brick wall, watching other students pass by, with their designer backpacks and carefree laughter. None of them noticed the girl whose entire future had just crumbled in a single typed sentence. Back at Murphy's Coffee House, the afternoon shift brought fresh humiliation. Manager Rick Kowalski, a man whose belly strained against his polo shirt and whose breath always smelled of cigarettes, cornered Emily by the espresso machine. "Late again, Martinez," he sneered, using the surname from her fake ID, the only name she'd ever known. "And don't think I haven't seen your little dance routines on the security camera. This is a workplace, not some talent show audition." Emily's cheeks burned as she mumbled an apology, but Rick wasn't finished. "You spill one more drink drop, one more plate, and you're gone. There's a line of people who'd kill for this job, and none of them think they're special." The other employees snickered behind the counter, and Emily felt the familiar sting of shame wash over her like scalding coffee. During her break, Emily retreated to the supply closet, seeking a moment of peace, among the boxes of napkins and cleaning supplies. But even there, she couldn't escape the cruelty. Through the thin walls, she heard her co-workers' voices clearly. "Poor girl thinks she's going somewhere," laughed Sandra, the day shift supervisor. "With what, her tip jar dreams and those puppy dogs' eyes." Another voice chimed in. "Someone should tell her that community college dropouts don't become anything special. Maybe she'd be more useful if she just accepted folding napkins is her ceiling." The laughter that followed cut deeper than any knife. Emily pressed her back against the wall, fighting tears that threatened to betray her vulnerability. These people saw her every day, watched her work harder than anyone else, yet they spoke about her as if she were nothing more than a temporary inconvenience. The evening brought more of the same painful routine. Emily's worn shoes slipped on the freshly mopped floor as she balanced a tray of steaming beverages, her tired muscles betraying her at the worst possible moment. The ceramic cups crashed to the ground in a symphony of destruction, hot liquid splashing across her uniform and the floor. The entire coffee shop turned to stare, some customers shaking their heads in annoyance, others pulling out their phones to record her humiliation. "Jesus, Emily," Rick's voice boomed across the room. "Every week with you, are you blind or just cursed?" Her face flushed crimson as she dropped to her knees, frantically gathering the broken pieces with shaking hands. The laughter echoed in her ears, each chuckle a reminder of how small she'd become in this world that seemed determined to crush her spirit. But what happened next would change everything in ways she never could have imagined. A gentle hand reached down to help her collect the shattered ceramic, and Emily looked up to see a distinguished older man with kind eyes and silver hair. His expensive suit seemed out of place in the modest coffee shop, but his movements were careful and respectful as he helped her clean up the mess. "You shouldn't let them speak to you like that," he said softly, his voice carrying an authority that immediately quieted the room. Emily felt a strange flutter of recognition, though she couldn't place where she might have seen him before. "It's fine," she whispered, avoiding his gaze. "I'm used to it." The man's expression darkened. "No one should be used to cruelty, especially someone so young." He helped her to her feet, his touch gentle but somehow familiar. "Do I know you?" Emily asked, studying his face for clues. The man's breath caught, and for a moment he seemed to wrestle with words that wouldn't come. With trembling hands, the stranger reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a photograph, old and worn from years of handling. Emily's world tilted as she recognized the image. A baby girl with familiar dark curls and bright eyes held by a woman, with a sad smile standing beside the very man who now faced her. "That's me," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the coffee shop's background noise. "But I don't understand. I don't remember any of this." The man's eyes filled with tears. He'd held back for nearly 2 decades. "You were taken from us when you were just 18 months old," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "I've been searching for you every day since then. My name is Robert Chen, and you're my daughter Sarah, though I see you've been called Emily." The revelation hit her like a physical blow, 17 years of questions suddenly demanding answers all at once. "Why now?" Emily's voice rose, attracting stares from the few remaining customers. "Why are you here now when I'm at my absolute lowest point? Where were you when I was sleeping in shelters, when I was eating from dumpsters, when I thought I was completely alone in this world?" Her words came out in a rush. Years of pain and abandonment, pouring out like water through a broken dam. Robert's face crumpled with the weight of his failures. "I was always looking," he said desperately. "Every private investigator, every lead, every sleepless night. I never stopped trying to find you. But I was too late to save you from suffering, and I'll carry that guilt forever." Emily backed away, shaking her head. "I don't need saving now," she said fiercely. "I've been drowning alone so long, I've learned to breathe underwater." The metaphor hung between them, heavy with the truth of her resilience born from necessity. Robert's voice became barely a whisper. "I didn't come here to save you, Sarah. I came to ask for your forgiveness and to try to build whatever relationship you might allow." Emily stared at him, this stranger who claimed to be her father, this man whose absence had shaped every difficult day of her life. The weight of the revelation combined with her exhaustion and stress proved overwhelming. Without another word, she turned and walked away, leaving Robert standing alone in the empty coffee shop, surrounded by the broken pieces of ceramic that seemed to mirror both their shattered hearts. She walked out into the Chicago night, her mind reeling with questions she wasn't ready to face and emotions she didn't know how to process. The next morning brought changes that Emily couldn't explain or believe. Her phone buzzed with a call from the university's financial aid office. "Miss Martinez, there seems to have been an error in your account. Your tuition has been paid in full, and you're eligible for reinstatement immediately." Before she could respond, another call came through, this time from a non-profit organization offering her a paid internship that would cover all her living expenses while she completed her degree. Email after email arrived throughout the day, book vouchers, meal plan coverage, even an offer for campus housing. Each message was accompanied by the same simple note: "I will not replace the years we lost, but I will build the ones ahead." Dad. Emily sat in her basement room, staring at her phone in disbelief, torn between gratitude and anger at this sudden intervention in her carefully constructed independent life. For weeks, Emily avoided every attempt at contact from Robert. Letters arrived daily, each one sharing memories from her early childhood photos of the life she couldn't remember, and gentle requests for just one conversation. He never pushed, never demanded, but his presence was constant, a shadow of possibility she wasn't ready to face. Meanwhile, her life transformed in ways she'd never imagined possible. Her grades soared without the constant stress of financial survival, and professors began to notice her exceptional analytical skills and passion for social justice. She started tutoring other struggling students, sharing the strategies she'd developed during her hardest days. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same suffering that had nearly broken her had also forged strength she didn't know she possessed. 2 years passed before Emily finally agreed to meet Robert face to face. They chose a small park near campus neutral ground where she could escape if the emotions became too overwhelming. Robert looked older, more fragile than she remembered from that night in the coffee shop, but his eyes lit up when he saw her approaching. "You look so much like your mother," he said softly, tears already forming. Emily's defenses remained high. "Tell me about her," she said simply. For the next 3 hours, Robert painted pictures with his words, stories of a woman who had loved books and justice, who had dreamed of changing the world through education, who had died in a car accident just months after Emily's kidnapping. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the park, Emily began to understand that Robert's pain had been as deep and enduring as her own. Graduation day arrived like a dream Emily had never dared to have, as her name was called Emily Chen Martinez. She walked across the stage in her worn but polished shoes, the same ones that had carried her through countless shifts at the coffee shop. The auditorium erupted in applause, not just from Robert, who sat in the front row, with tears streaming down his face, but from classmates, professors, and community members whose lives she'd touched through her volunteer work and advocacy. Her valedictorian speech focused not on personal achievement, but on the power of recognition, how being truly seen by others could transform a life. "I once danced alone in an empty coffee shop," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the packed auditorium, "not knowing that someone was watching, someone who would help me remember that I mattered." The Emily Foundation for Educational Justice opened 3 years later in a renovated building on Chicago's South Side, its mission carved in marble above the entrance: "Every child deserves to be seen, heard, and valued." The grand opening drew hundreds of supporters, from corporate sponsors to community leaders to the countless students Emily had mentored over the years. As she stood before the crowd, Emily's voice carried the strength born from her deepest struggles. "They mocked me for dreaming, for believing I was worth more than their expectations," she said, gesturing toward the full auditorium. "But look who's watching now." Her eyes found Robert in the audience, this man who had lost her once and spent nearly 20 years finding her again. The foundation would go on to provide educational support to thousands of underprivileged children each program, designed by someone who understood what it meant to be overlooked and underestimated. At the reception following the opening ceremony, Emily finally approached Robert, who had been standing quietly in the corner, overwhelmed by pride and lingering guilt. "Thank you," she said simply. "Not just for the money or the opportunities, but for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." Robert shook his head. "You saved yourself, Sarah. I just happened to witness your strength." Emily smiled, the first truly peaceful expression he'd seen cross her face. "My name is Emily now," she said, gently. "Sarah was the little girl who was taken away. Emily is the woman who chose to stay and fight." They embraced then, two people who had found each other across decades of separation and pain, their relationship built not on what was lost, but on what was possible moving forward. As the evening wound down and the last guests departed, Emily stood alone in her foundation's main hall, surrounded by photos of the children whose lives would be changed by the program she'd created. The scared, hungry girl who had danced with a mop in an empty coffee shop seemed like a character from someone else's story, yet Emily carried her memory with reverence and gratitude. Every struggle had prepared her for this moment. Every rejection had strengthened her resolve. Every night of doubt had taught her to recognize her own worth. She picked up her phone and recorded a video message that would be shared thousands of times across social media to every girl cleaning floors, while dreaming of something bigger to every student choosing between textbooks and dinner to everyone who feels invisible. This is your sign. Keep going. Your light is not invisible, it's just waiting for the right moment to shine. The video ended with Emily's radiant smile, a beacon of hope for anyone who had ever felt forgotten by the world. Have you ever felt invisible in your own life, or do you know someone who has struggled to be seen and valued? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Congratulations, type 7 in the comments, so I know you stayed with me until the end. Leave a like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. See you